A warm welcome, dear leader in this wonderful world full of possibilities. Today I have a very special guest for you. She is HRVP Center of Excellence, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Talent Acquisition at Beiersdorf. She started her career in marketing at GlaxoSmithKline, now at Beiersdorf, and since 3 years, she changed tasks to lead the diversity, inclusion, and equity agenda at Beiersdorf. And since this year, she's also responsible for talent acquisition and employer branding. Please give a warm welcome to Misel Ahom.
Well, thank you so much, Marcus. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me and for your
Yes.
lovely warm welcome.
Yes, you're very welcome. And I was actually, that, waiting for quite a while to interview you, because more than 1 year ago I asked you already, and you were so busy, said, "No, Marcus, so I really want to do it, but not now." And now we're finally making it possible. So thank you very much to making space in your busy schedule.
Pleasure, pleasure. And hopefully I have a little bit more to share now, right? 1 year
Yes.
later.
Yeah, you'll see. We'll see.
Mm,
So, let's start with first thing. We're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the
yeah.
first question to all the listeners out there, what does it really mean? Because probably many of them have heard it before, but what does it really mean? And why are you so fascinated about it? Because you gave up your marketing career, 20 years of marketing, and now you
Mm.
changed from marketing to this topic. What fascinates you about it?
Yes, I mean, actually, it's a super interesting question. What does diversity, equity, and inclusion, what does that mean?
Hmm.
Because we always say, when you ask 5 people, you
Hmm.
get 6 definitions,
All
right?
right.
So, but maybe I can just simplistically lay out what does it mean, so to say, for us at Beiersdorf. So
All right.
when we talk about diversity,
Hmm.
we really talk about the presence of differences, whether
Hmm.
they are visible, whether they are invisible, and then we think about dimensions like gender, race, ethnicity,
Hmm.
your socioeconomic background,
Hmm.
your personality, your style, your religion, your identity, etc., etc. So, and really, it is what makes you unique as a person.
Hmm.
When it comes to inclusion, we talk about, like a genuine sense of belonging, yeah, and feeling valued. And
Hmm.
in contrast to diversity, inclusion is really an act. So we tend to say diversity is a fact, inclusion is an act. It's really
Hmm.
linked to, how are people behaving in a way to make someone feel comfortable and safe. How does somebody
Yeah.
create a safe space? So this is kind of what we talk about when we talk about inclusion. And then when we talk about equity, we refer to, yeah, really, to like the fairness or justice in the way that people are
Hmm.
being treated. And
Hmm.
here we talk about, within the context of Beiersdorf, very much around equitable opportunity. So
Hmm.
providing people with equitable opportunities and making sure that we are somehow eliminating the, the different barriers that different people face, so that
Hmm.
that the outcome is the same, and people have an equitable opportunity to thrive and to succeed in Beiersdorf.
Hmm.
So this is
That's
simplistically what those terms mean.
yeah. And
And
let
then
me
why?
let me say something. I
Mm,
think alone this definition for me makes a lot clear, and it's not really something completely new, even though some people may not have heard the what it means or these diversity, inclusion, equity. Well, what is that about? It is very known to everybody. Yeah, that everybody feel that they belong to this team, belong to this company. They have an important task that contribute to the overall purpose and goal of the company. So I really love the definition. Thank you very much. But and then I interrupted you, and you wanted to go on with your personal
no, you
fascination,
were
or
asking me, why am I so fascinated,
yes,
right,
yes,
by
exactly,
this?
yes.
And I'm fascinated by it because I honestly believe that that everyone has great potential, and that people, that people have really the potential to succeed. And I would love to create a world where, where this potential can be unleashed, that everyone has that opportunity. And we know that unfortunately that is not the case. And so as a marketer, I was always super fascinated by, how do people tick? What makes them tick? What are their needs? Why are they behaving in a certain way? Why are they, making the choices that they're making? And actually, diversity, equity, and inclusion is also really about understanding people, but more from an empathy perspective, trying to put yourselves in the shoes of another, trying to not judge other people based on where, their experiences, their backgrounds, where they're coming from, and through that enable everyone, so to say, to, like you said, to really, to thrive, to be successful in the way that they can show up their best self, so to say.
Nice. Very nice. And I understand also now your fascination, because being empathetic with people, really making it possible for them, enabling them to bring in everything they have, that's a great thing. That, of course, me as a coach, I also love it. And I understand better now that where your fascination comes from. Can you give us 1, 2, or 3 explicit examples what you did at Beiersdorf that changed the way people did things, and what was the positive effect it had for a team or for the company?
Yeah, that is not super easy, actually, because I must say that it took us a while to really shape a strategy, to build a roadmap, to identify what does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean for us. But I think what helped us is the fact that we built a strategy and a roadmap. So we really mapped out for us, what is it we want to focus on, right, in the next few years. And I think this is, for us, a real success, because diversity, equity, inclusion is really complex. It's really super multifaceted. And we really decided, okay, we're going to really create a roadmap for us, and we're going to really focus on what we think matters most. For us, within the diversity space, that was, we tackled first gender. So we set ourselves, really an ambition. We said, listen, we are one of the biggest skincare companies in the world. We have the biggest skincare brand in the world, actually, with Nivea. And, Nivea is in like 1.3 billion households all over the world. 80% of our buyers, of our consumers, are female. We have 50% of women employees in the company are women. So when we then looked at our representation of women in leadership, we recognized, hold on, those numbers don't match up. So, we said, listen, our ambition is, we want to achieve gender balance in leadership. And we want to disrupt and eliminate the barriers that are in place that is preventing the women that we have in the company to rise to the top, so to say. And so we really focus on that. We set ourselves an ambition. We went out with that ambition on the 8th of March 2021, International Women's Day. And I am very proud to say that we also achieved our ambition last year in September. So we got to 50-50 across all of our global management levels. And that is ahead of our target, because our ambition was by 2025. So this is really a success, I would say, for us. We're really proud that we achieved this gender balance. So this is, I would say, this is one success story for us.
Let me already ask a bit deeper. So I understand, and I totally understand, especially for you, for such a company and with the Nivea brand that you do have, 80% female users and so on. That equal share between men and women in management is definitely a good goal. So is that in itself it is a success, I understand. Did you sense effects of this What changed and from where are you coming, by the way? How much percent was it before at March 8, 21? How many percent were female leaders? And now it's 50-50, you said. And what changed by this?
Yeah, so
Could you say something?
we were basically in the mid late 30s when we really started
Hmm.
measuring it, so to say.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then we mapped our target to get to 50-50
Yeah.
by 2025. And I have to say that, there is so much data out there that demonstrates why D&I is really important for creating high performance teams, for delivering more innovation, for creating a more agile mindset, to create more a sense of belonging and more purpose in the organization. And we also started to observe that. So as we were really moving towards a much more gender balanced leadership population,
Hmm.
when you look at the team dynamics, they became more there was better decision making, more discussions on topics, different perspectives being taken into consideration. So the problem solving, innovative thinking, all of that, started to increase, so to say. And in addition to that, the sense of, I would say, engagement within the teams also went up. And now this is not just me saying this. So we also, of course, track. So we track our employee engagement once a year, and we are really seeing. We also have 5 questions on diversity, equity, and inclusion incorporated, and questions around, I feel a strong sense of belonging at Beiersdorf. I feel I can be my authentic self at Beiersdorf. My management is committed to driving diversity. We respect diverse voices and opinions, etc. We see that go up, right? So we've seen that increase, which is, of course, fantastic. And in addition to that, Beiersdorf also has had, honestly, like record results in the last 3 years. And of course, it'd be too much to say that this is fully directly linked to the increase of women leaders. But definitely, it isn't. We have highlighted it's good for business. We are really one of the strongest performing beauty companies, and so it's also really delivered us good results.
Okay. So that's nice to hear. I'm very glad actually that it goes in this direction. And could you say, because you gave us some examples, positive examples of the 5 questions you're doing in the yearly survey, would you agree that because of these 5 values going up, that the employee loyalty goes up as well?
Yeah, and so we don't measure loyalty, right? But we measure engagement. Nevertheless, all those so all the indicators that we measure, when you look outside at when loyalty does get measured, it indeed says that when you have more diverse team, they tend to be more engaged, they tend to be committed, and they tend to be also more loyal to the company. Why? Because people feel that they really can contribute constructively to the success of the organization. They feel that their voice is heard, they have a seat around the table, and that their perspectives and opinions and input is really, really valued and recognized by the company. So I would say, we don't measure loyalty, but I would say that's all the data suggests that indeed we are also then impacting loyalty in a positive way.
Yeah. And the second thing that comes to my mind is psychological safety. Because you're saying people contribute more, they are not afraid of speaking out their opinion openly and not hiding it behind other people's backs. Would you also say that psychological safety is increased with these measures?
So we don't measure psychological safety, but what we do is that we actually have a huge training program that we are in the middle of rolling out, which is all about developing inclusive leaders. So all of our people managers are being trained on how to be an inclusive leaders, which is really done through the eyes of DE&I. And this is really with the purpose of creating, real psychologically safe environments within those individual
Yes.
teams. Because we know that actually when you have psychologically safe teams, you also drive much more high performing teams. People are more comfortable, to disagree. People
Yes.
are more comfortable to sort of lean in and take a risk because they feel that their leader has their back. People feel more comfortable also to identify challenges that they might see, and to adhere less to groupthink because they know that diversity of perspectives and experiences and ideas is actually valued and embraced. So this is a super important initiative because this is actually what drives inclusion. And without inclusion, diversity anyway doesn't matter almost because, unless that diversity is really safeguarded and embraced within an inclusive environment, you don't get the benefits from it.
Yes, definitely. Now, I hope you listeners out there, one thing that Misel said is that employees are more open to disagree. And I very much hope that you out there are open for that people disagree and openly speak out their opinion, because we need employees who speak out their own mind, their own ideas, and not just adhere to what the leader said or proposed. So it was, of course, meant as a joke. Misel was laughing. By the way, everybody in the podcast, if you want to see Misel and myself in the video, you can go to my YouTube channel and see us here laughing and having some fun with each other in this interview.
Although, Marcus, if I can just, build on that a bit, because, the interesting, I would say, like side effect of really driving DEI is that, it's actually quite tough. So it leads to uncomfortable situations, it leads to more discussion. It leads to, not being able to always move on as smoothly because all of a sudden you've got people that are bringing in different perspectives that are saying, hold up a second, I'm not fully with you yet. Hey, you know what? I have a different perspective or a different view. This is actually at times, frustrating because very often, people like it sometimes to be in an environment and everyone is like, yeah, agree. Okay, right. Let's go. Let's move on. And when you are driving that diversity and when you build that inclusion, actually sometimes it means that you take more time to get to a decision, but then once you get to the decision, it's a stronger and a better decision. But it also means that people have to lean into uncomfortable situations because they are also confronted with people that are different, have different perspectives, different values. So it's not an easy journey.
Yeah. Does that then mean that you need leaders with a certain maturity level to when you approach this DIE policy at all? Or is it possible for a company which is not really that developed yet? Or would you say that every company can dive into these principles and grow in this area?
I would say every company can dive into it because ultimately it is really about building your empathy muscle, as a leader, but also as a person. And everyone can be trained on that. And this is why we do put a lot of effort in giving people the tools, right? So how do you deal with all these different opinions that are living in your team constructively? How do you manage it when people have totally opposing views? When conversations get very uncomfortable, how do you manage that in a way so that the dialogue is constructive, is progressive, and everyone feels that they're kind of part of the discussion? So we do train our leaders and give them the tools so that they become more confident in doing that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm coaching many leaders, and some are good at that, and some, actually, many leaders, especially dominant leaders, they can definitely grow their, how do you call it, empathy muscle?
Empathy muscle.
Empathy muscle that they teach, that they learn for themselves to listen better, active listening, but really being open to other opinions, not just wanting a short and quick discussion and then wanting to go on.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask once more. Is there another? I saw already nice hints, and I'm totally with you. You totally got me. And is there one more figure? One more, many people love facts and figures. Is there one more fact or figure that you would like to give us to prove that diversity, equity, and inclusion is definitely worthwhile spending time with this concept?
Ah, well, I mean, other than increased engagement, and the fact that we have super good results as a company, I would say actually
Listen,
it's maybe.
everybody, please listen. Beiersdorf, the last 3 years, the best results ever.
Record
Best
results, yes.
best results ever.
Um,
And the yearly employee survey shows high engagement rates for the employees, which probably means you don't measure it, you said so, but probably for me, this means they probably stay longer and they're more worthy for the company than if they just sit there and do their job.
Yeah, I mean, we do try and really engage people to the extent where, they also really lean in. I mean, we're very ambitious. We've got a super
Hmm.
ambitious um a purpose. We want to be the best skincare company in the world. It means we're asking our people to take risks, to have a winning mindset,
Hmm.
to really kind of come on a journey with us, to
Hmm.
display excellence. Yeah, this means that people need to move out of their comfort zones, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It means that we need to bring in more people that reflect that real rich diversity of our global consumers so that we
Hmm.
can better meet their needs. Um, and it means that we also need to increase the representation of our brands so that our diverse consumers are seen.
Hmm.
I mean, God, when you think about Nivea, you think about Eucerin, Hansaplast, we have big platforms, we have a
Hmm.
big voice. So we have also a really a big opportunity to not only as a company drive DE&I, but also show externally what does an inclusive representative society
Yeah,
look like.
yeah,
And
very
and
nice.
I really am proud to say that we're on a journey, but we're more and more kind of taking that responsibility, so to
Great.
say.
Yeah, I love that really because I keep getting goosebumps when you talk about these things because I love that if the company changes in this direction, that people actually feel valued and enjoy working. I mean, how much better can it get that people enjoy working and speaking out your mind and creating something great for a
Mm.
team, for a company, and for those brands that you just mentioned. Let's go into what is your hint? There's a team leader, maybe not a company leader, possibly also that, but there's a team lead. Um, Maybe she has six or maybe 30 employees in their team or in their teams. What measures, what activities do you propose this leader to go as a first step? Or second and third step if you have something.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I would say, first of all, we always say inclusion starts with I, right? It starts with every single individual. And so
Mhm.
every leader needs to really role model inclusion, right?
Mhm.
So I mean, we always say that we have to hold ourselves accountable, and we are always every single person has unconscious bias. We have to acknowledge that. You have to acknowledge that. I mean, you were saying about some leaders, the dominant ones. This is also kind of a trend, I guess, in general in leadership, right? How do you show vulnerability as a leader? How do
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
invite people to disagree with you so you don't only have yay sayers, right?
Yeah.
But so this is also a journey, but it is also a journey when it comes to acknowledging that you are biased as a leader. And how can you actively interrupt that bias? So this is looking at your team and making sure, does everyone have an equal opportunity to contribute? Do you have any favorites? Do you dismiss some voices and you favor other voices? What do you do when you see bias or microaggressions or inappropriate behavior. As a leader, do you then stand up? Do you interrupt it? Do you say something? Are you acting as an ally? Are you using your voice as a leader with a platform, to drive the right behavior and the right messages? So this is, first of all, I would always say, really, inclusion starts with I. As a leader, you need to act as a role model.
Okay, let me try to repeat it to make it really clear what is a possible measure for people who listen to the podcast. So inclusion means I reflect on myself. What are my biases? What is my contribution to the fact that everybody gets heard in my team? That people don't say just yes, but people are openly speaking out their opinion, even though it's a no, or they have doubts or questions or fears or insecurity, that they talk about their feelings. That's happening in the team. That's one thing. The other thing I heard is that leaders show up as a vulnerable person. So they talk about own feelings. They talk about opinions that may not be shared with others. They show their own insecurity, that they talk about their mistakes that they're doing. So showing up as a vulnerable person, that I heard that as a second possibility for people to go into that. And was there a third thing that I didn't repeat?
No, I think you captured it. I captured it well. I would say, so to sum that up, it's really like, look at your team and and ask yourself the question: what are you doing intentionally to create a psychologically safe space so that every individual in your team, irrespective of how they prefer and like to contribute, can fully contribute, and do you need to perhaps hold yourself accountable for preferring the voices or giving more airtime to certain voices and less to others? So this is within your current team, so to say.
Yeah, and once more to say to the people, psychological safety. Two or three things. What I have in mind is psychological safe environment means I talk openly about my mistakes. It means that I talk to others when I see that they're making mistakes. Also, my personal manager, if she makes a mistake, I talk about that openly, and I speak openly about my ideas. And do I agree or disagree with ideas of others? So that's what I right now have in mind for psychological safety. Is there more from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, no, I think you've captured it well. And in one sentence, if I would have to capture what does psychological safety mean in a team environment, it is to create like a fearless environment where people, they're not afraid to speak up. Because they don't fear the consequences, they're not afraid to show up as their true authentic self. They don't feel they don't fear hiding part of their identity. So it really is about creating a fearless space so that people can maximize the potential that they can bring into the team.
All right, good, nice. So first step is the I.
And that's one.
Search for look at yourself. What am I doing right now as a leader? Am I giving everybody enough airspace and so on? Am I creating psychological safety with the measures, concrete, conscious measures that I'm taking every day? That would be step one. So the self-reflection.
Yeah, that's one thing that you could easily do as a leader when you have a small team and perhaps not so many resources, right? So I think the second thing that you can do as a leader is start small and focus on, kind of one element within D&I that you want to change. So we always say, don't boil the ocean, right? You really have to focus. You have to focus and you have to prioritize on, what is the one thing that you can do that would change the needle within DE&I. And that differs actually for many teams, many organizations, many countries. I would say if I reflect on, it's interesting because when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it is so broad, it's so multifaceted. But within the, I would say maybe the German or the DACH context, we still very often first go to gender because, when you look at Germany, for example, Germany has one of the lowest representations of women in leadership in Europe.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so very often it starts with gender, and trying to create a more gender balanced organization across teams and functions.
Which is a good
But it
start,
really
right?
is about, sorry?
Which would be a good start, or not?
Which would be, I think, a very good start. I think
Hmm.
it would be a very good start because, what is interesting about, and also focusing on gender, it's kind of sort of breaks one of the myths that exists within this space,
Hmm.
and that is that people very often think when you talk about D&I, people think that you're only talking about
Okay.
the minority groups,
Hmm.
right? And a lot of people think it's not for me, but the reality is that D&I actually is for everyone. It includes everyone. When we talk about gender, actually we talk about 50-50 in terms of the world population. We know that the teams become more inclusive, they become more better performing. So everyone actually is benefiting, all genders, the whole organization, the teams. So it's really a topic, I think, that it's a great first focus area if you have not yet started at all.
Yeah. All right, good. So let's I'm gonna check one more example. Let's
Mm.
imagine there's a manager out here listening.
Yeah,
He or she is working in a company. 80% of the employees are male,
yeah.
80% of the customers are male,
Hmm.
and 80% of the managers are male. So
Right.
I would say I did a great job. It's 80% in all areas. Why change?
This is really interesting because well, first of all, we really always talk about gender balance, right? So we
Hmm.
really talk about balance. So it's the balance that brings the benefits. And when we look at Beiersdorf, for example, we have certain areas that are historically have much more representation of women, like marketing, like HR,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
we have certain areas where historically we have much more representation of men. And for example, finance, supply chain, R&D, when it comes to leadership. And actually, what we're not saying, what, we'll stick with 80% of men in finance and 80% of women in HR, and that we get to 50-50, right?
Hmm.
It's not. We really talk about, what, it is the balance where you get the benefits. And I would say, in addition to that, I think that from an investment perspective, many stakeholders, many investment groups, banks, they are actually expecting companies, to move the needle on driving more D&I within their company, very often starting with gender. So the pressure
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
from an external perspective there. In addition, there is a tremendous talent shortage in the world, particularly actually within the DACH region. There's a big talent shortage. And we also know that, the younger generations, they're expecting companies to also actively drive D&I. I mean, they're expecting to see diverse teams, balanced teams, for companies to take a stand on tough issues, etc. And then, in addition, I would also say, what? Even if we have 80% of our consumers are women, but we really would like to get a lot more male consumers, right? So this is why it's super important for us also to get more men into the marketing function so that we can better reflect the needs of our male consumers. And in general, we want to really drive a balanced slate across the organization because we
Hmm. Hmm.
know this is ultimately what will lead to better, more competitive business results.
Yeah.
So
Does it mean that in marketing before March 8, age of March 2021, you had more female leaders, now you have less female leaders in marketing?
Well, we actually are relatively stable, I would say. And what we also look at, and I think this is a really important point, is we always look at, who is in our pipeline, right? So it's really important to make sure that we don't lose talent and that we don't have a gap between the pipeline and then the leadership, so to say. So there's really kind of two topics.
Okay.
So it's not just about driving the KPIs without thinking about, first of all, safeguarding the performance, B, looking at who's in our pipeline. And if you, for example, have an organization like you mentioned where you've got 80% men in the organization, you've got 80% leaders are men, you've got 80% consumers are male, you know what? It's super hard to get to 50-50 at the top because you also don't have the pipeline of women, right? And this is the same case in the reverse. So then it is about, okay, how do we attract the talent so that we can build also a balanced pipeline so we can feed our future leadership roles in the right way? And that takes time,
So,
so you have to be patient with DE&I.
patient and consistent. So don't just sit around and be patient until the women are coming
Be
or the men are
patient, be
coming for marketing
consistent.
jobs.
Yes.
About drive it. Stay in the driver's seat and make it happen. So it doesn't happen next year, like you had the goal to be changed within 4 years. You made it in 2.5. But really consistently work on it. That the conditions, that the D&I conditions, how I call it now, that they improve in the right direction. Good. Is there anything, a last hint or last message you want to give to our listeners out there that, and it can maybe a repetition if you say, maybe you said it before, but what's one or two things that people definitely should take home from this podcast if for whatever reason they didn't take notes? What would it be?
Right. So, I mean, God, I have so much to say, right, on this topic. But first of all, my one message would be, you know what, it's worth it. So the journey it's worth it, and don't be afraid to start the journey. Don't be afraid that D&I means less opportunities for you, that you will be treated unfairly. It's not a zero-sum game. D&I is actually about growing the pie and creating a much more constructive and vibrant and equitable environment for everyone. So everyone will benefit. So this is, I think, really one message I would like to leave with people is D&I is not for the few. It is for everyone. It's for the many, and it's not just for you as an individual. It is for teams, for organizations. It's also for societies. You'll become much more innovative, much more productive, much more inclusive as a society when you drive this. So this is one message. And the second message is, be patient, because it's a marathon for sure, not a sprint. And you're never quite there in D&I. There is no there in D&I, right? It's an ongoing journey, but it's really worth it. It's enriching, it's satisfying. You really can change the lives of people when you are more consciously trying to give everyone a voice and include people, so that they feel heard, they feel seen, and they feel motivated to give their best self within the team environment. So, everyone go and do it.
Great. I really love it. And I have one last question.
Yeah.
What do you do with people who don't want to go with it? If there's a leader, if there's a manager who says, yes, sure, reflect on myself, my own behavior, but I have these 3 employees, they're so good, of course I give the biggest and most important projects to them because they're most reliable and they have the most experience. So who are not open to it. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? First of all, it's trying to understand the why,
Hmm.
so why are they not willing to
Hmm.
engage, to participate?
Hmm.
What is it that's holding them back?
Hmm.
Very often when it comes to D&I, there are emotions involved, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
very often it's fear. It's a, it's a fear of, well, what does it mean for me? Um, what are the implications? Sometimes it's just I don't know exactly what to do. And so they feel not confident to
Hmm.
participate because,
Hmm.
sometimes you're putting yourself out there and somebody might call you out. And, we also say D&I is not about the conversations that you cannot have. It's actually about the conversations that you can have. It's about going on a journey together. It's about learning together. And very, very often when you have an open and constructive dialogue, even with the people that are skeptical, even with the people that are pushing back, very often you actually get them to come on board. They just might not come on board as quickly as
Hmm.
some other
Hmm. Hmm.
people, you
All right.
know. And then, listen, ultimately, some people might reject it, and this is ultimately also a reflection of the society in which we live. I mean, if you have really really hardcore rejectors, then the question is more, you know are the values of that person actually aligned with the values of the company?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
mean, if they are, but they don't want to actively engage, but they're still, strong contributors to the organization. Okay, but if not, and they cannot work respectively and constructively with their fellow colleagues. They can't be tolerant of the differences of the people. Yeah, then perhaps there is a different conversation to be had. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
must say that really in 99% of the instances, when you have a conversation, you try and understand what is causing the resistance, people still come on board.
Nice. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Again, I was
Mm,
smiling when you gave this answer. Very nice. I very much enjoyed the interview, Misel, and
thank you so much. Me too.
I'm sure we will have a contribute with this content to many companies because they follow your example. Misel, thank you very much for your time
Thank you so much.
and see you again. And maybe we have a second version of this when you're pursuing your career to the next
Yeah,
level.
when you get lots of
Who
questions
would
saying,
know?
"What?
Yeah,
What's she talking
sure.
about?"
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Misel. Take care.
All right, ciao, ciao, bye.